Welcome to the iPad Podcast, a weekly podcast from Mac's Future.
Okay, welcome to the iPad Podcast. This is episode 85, and this is Lex at Mac'sFuture.com. Today is Sunday, January 15th, 2012. Hey, and everybody, listen, I've skipped a lot of weeks now in recording this iPad Podcast, and there's some of you who have emailed me and asked why, and it's because I had this horrible cough and chest cough and then nose, running nose and whatever. And, I think it's just a virus that went around, and I tried to get rid of it, and I think I'm finally sort of rid of it. And I just was coughing, and I tried to record, and I couldn't. So this is the longest I've gone. I was able to maintain recording on a weekly basis. And I had to take a long break simply because I just couldn't record. Because every time I tried to record, I'd cough after trying to talk about some story or something like that. And anyway, so now I'm back at it. It's January 15th. There's a lot to talk about. And let's get to it. Remember, this is a chit-chat-free podcast about all things iPad, brought to you by Lex here. And you can support it by giving it a positive feedback in the iTunes store or on YouTube, where I have the video version of this, or on Blip TV, or other places that it's distributed. So thanks for listening, and let's get to the stories. Okay, so I guess the first thing we should talk about is there's a lot of reports, and they look like credible reports because the report is coming from Bloomberg News, that the iPad 3 is in full production in China. And I'm actually looking at this site called the Herald Sun. I guess they're just re-reporting what is, being reported by Bloomberg. And they're saying, it's going to come out in March. And of course it's going to come out in March. The iPad 2 came out in March, and the first iPad came out in, I think the first week of April. So it's definitely time, and we're getting that time of the year when a new version of the iPad is going to come out. And one of the things that they're saying it's going to have, obviously it's going to have a faster graphics card and a faster processor. So there's a good chance it'll have, let's say, a quad-core processor. The iPad 2 has an A5 chip dual-core processor. It'll probably have, I predict the RAM will be bumped up. The iPad 2, I think, has, 516 megabytes of RAM. I think we're going to get to a full gigabyte of RAM. And then there's going to be the Retina screen display. So we're going to have, much denser pixels. And, I think that's a given. Now, one other part of the rumor is that it's going to have 4G capabilities for cell phone data connection. Also known as LTE. Now, AT&T has been rolling out 4G data networks, and so has Verizon. And I think it makes sense that it would come to the iPad 3 before it came to the iPhone, because the iPad has tremendous battery power. The battery can last, 10 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours, and 4G data, or 4G chip that connects to the cell phone data, takes up a lot of power. And that's been one of the knocks against all those Android devices that run on 4G. Yes, you get faster data connection, but it uses up the battery. But the iPad has a tremendously big battery. So I could see giving people the option to have 4G. And remember, it's not a contract. The way the iPad works is you can get an iPad that has a cell phone data connection, but you're not locked into any long-term contract. And I suspect the prices are going to stay the same as they are now, which is basically entry price at $499. Then you bump up, to a range up to 800, 829 or 869, something like that. So I'm kind of looking forward to this. I think it's going to be really good upgrade, and I think I'll definitely upgrade. I have an iPad 2. I'll probably sell it again. I'll probably get a decent resale value for it, And I always urge people, if you have an iPad and you love it, consider upgrading immediately, because each evolution of the iPad gets better and better. Having a faster processor really does make a difference. Having a thinner design does make a difference. We'll see if Apple can make the device lighter. I think that'll be a big breakthrough if Apple can make it even lighter than the iPad 2. So, expect this to be sort of announced in early March, pre-ordered, and then delivered probably at the end of March. And, it's going to be great. I can't wait. Now, good news if you're into jailbreaking your iOS devices and you like jailbreaking your iPad too. For quite a while now, if you had upgraded to the latest version of the iOS, you weren't able to jailbreak your iPad 2, let alone your iPhone 4S. It seemed that iOS devices running with the A5 chip and also running on iOS 5 could not be jailbroken. But word comes now, I'm looking at the CNET site, that the people who are in the jailbreak community are very close to coming out with a untethered jailbreak for both the iPhone 4S and the iPad 2. And it says here on CNET site, according to a tweet picked up by iDownload blog, hacker Planet Being has announced that the iPhone 4S iPad 2 jailbreak has left the sandbox stage of development. And it goes on to state that the jailbreak is, quote, turning out to be more complex than Xgold 618, end quote. And basically, Xgold 618 was the baseboard chip in the iPhone 4 that was cracked by Planet Being and someone known as Muscle Nerd. So, what does that mean to jailbreak? I mean, some of you might be new to the iPad or iPhone devices. And what jailbreaking means is using software to allow you to put alternative stores for apps on your iPhone or iPad. As you may know, right now the only place that you can get apps, well, actually there's two places that you can get apps for your iPad, but the main place that you can get native apps for the iPad are through Apple's App Store. Now, you can get what are known as web apps by just saving a web app that's on a web page through the website, just saving it to your desktop of your iPad or your home screen of your iPad. But that's not really a native app. That's essentially a web page that's an application. So why would you want to jailbreak your iPad? Well, there are some programs that Apple won't allow through its approval process on the iPad or the iPhone. And, you might be adventurous and want these apps. Now, one app that I currently own but don't have installed on the iPad 2 that I'd like to install is Display Recorder. I think Ryan Petrick is the developer. And I bought it a long time ago, and he keeps upgrading it. But what it is, it's a video screen recording application for both the iPhone and the iPad. And what that means is you can record screen video of yourself using the iPad, using apps, and it's good for demonstrations and such. And Apple right now doesn't have any such app approved in the App Store. And I think Apple doesn't approve any such app because Apple's probably concerned it takes up a lot of video processing power, and some people might buy it and not have the ideal experience. Because remember, the iPad doesn't really have really powerful processors like as compared to a computer. Now, on a computer, you can get a program Apple doesn't control. Apple does have a Mac App Store now, and in the Mac App Store, they do have video screen recorders for the Mac, like Camtasia Studio, which I use on my Mac. So who knows, maybe eventually Apple will allow video recording through the App Store, particularly as the iPad gets more and more powerful processors. But right now that doesn't exist, and that's one of the reasons I would like to jailbreak my iPad, because then I could also, as part of this program, show you video screen captures of the apps that I use. So that's one reason. I mean, there's other reasons. People also jailbreak because they want to put their own sort of wallpaper in the iPad, sort of the background. They want to customize the springboard for the iPad and the other iOS devices to do all sorts of things. And actually, you can do all sorts of clever things that Apple currently doesn't do on the iPad or iPhone. If you jailbreak it, you can put in these sort of controls that say, hey, when I flick my finger a certain way on the screen, it'll trigger some app launching or something else happening. So that's another reason to jailbreak. Another reason to jailbreak is to get apps that might run afoul of what some of Apple's partners want to do. For example, the iPad, if you get it with a cell phone data connection, can connect to the internet, and there are third-party apps that you can install if it's jailbroken that allows you to turn your iPad into a Wi-Fi hotspot. And so then you could hook up your computer to the internet through the iPad's data connection. So that's another reason to jailbreak your iPad. And here's another reason. Apple currently restricts some apps from using cell phone data. So, for example, Apple's own FaceTime video conferencing app won't work over a cell phone data connection, but it will work over Wi-Fi. Well, there's a third-party app that basically tricks Apple's operating system into thinking that it's on Wi-Fi when it's on 3G or, let's say in the future, 4G data, and allows like FaceTime to work over 3G data, which is great because really that's what FaceTime should do. It should work over 3G data. So those are the kind of apps that I'd be interested in installing if this jailbreak becomes available. So anyways, it should be coming out soon according to the CNET website, and so keep an eye on it if you're into jailbreaking. There's nothing illegal about jailbreaking. The Library of Congress has issued a ruling saying that Apple's products can be jailbroken legally. It is your device, so you should be able to like open it and do whatever you want with it. That being said, there is some risk that you could, screw up your operating system. I mean, my experience has been, though, if you do screw up your iPad so it doesn't start, you just go to an Apple store and act dumb and say, God, I don't know why my iPad isn't working. And, it's sort of like the military's old don't ask, don't tell. If you don't tell them that you've jailbroken your iPad and just say it doesn't seem to work, they'll hook it up to a machine that'll essentially reset it to factory settings and allow it to reboot. So it's to me, it's not a big risk to jailbreak your iPad. One time I did screw it up and I had to go to the Apple store and they fixed it. But if you don't know what you're doing, I wouldn't venture into it. Okay, so Apple's very close to announcing its quarterly results for the quarter that ends December 31st. I think they're going to come out with their results. I think it's on January 24th, which is a Tuesday, 2 Tuesdays from now. And basically different Wall Street analysts have estimates for, what kind of iPad sales Apple had. And according to Fortune at CNN.com, the iPad sales estimates for the quarter, which is technically the first fiscal quarter for Apple, ranges from Apple selling 11.7 million to 19.5 million iPads. And it says here that the street's consensus, that means the consensus average of the different analysts, is that Apple will sell 13.5 million iPads. Now, obviously Apple is going to be selling a lot of these iPads. It was the holiday Christmas shopping season, and even though that the Apple Kindle Fire came out, I think, if anything, the Kindle Fire gets other people interested in the iPad. And also, the iPad sort of builds on its own momentum. As more and more people have iPads, other people who've been on the fence see their friends using the iPad, and they want to get it. I know a couple of people where I work who never were interested in the iPad, but now, they see people at work using it, and they want to get it. And so, it's hard to predict how many Apple's selling, but I wouldn't be surprised if Apple sold 15 million iPads. It's a major part of Apple's business, in addition to selling iPhones. And I don't know. I just think I don't know. We'll see what'll happen. I mean, nobody knows except Apple how many they sold. But, I think this device is really part of the transformation of computers into a more accessible form. So I think each iteration of this device is going to further sort of erode what's the traditional computer. I know I use the iPad for all sorts of things, for gaming, for watching video, for just doing so much. So we'll have to see. Now, recently, someone, who I would say is typical of people who have some knowledge of computers, asked me, why get an iPad if you can get it at a MacBook Air? The MacBook Airs are these very light, thin, fast, SSD-based laptops that Apple sells that have been doing really, really well. And the person said, well, why can't I just get a MacBook Air? Won't that do whatever an iPad does? And I thought about it, and I came up with this response, which I think really captures the difference. I said, on first impression, one may think that there is really no difference between having an iPad 2 or a MacBook Air. The question is there any reason to get an iPad 2 if you have an 11-inch MacBook Air or even a 13-inch MacBook Air? The answer is that the devices are very different, and each has their strengths and weaknesses, and you can justify getting both. I would recommend getting an iPad 2 if you already have access to a computer somewhere else, like at home or at work. Here's why. First, the iPad 2 has a much longer battery life than the MacBook Air. The iPad 2's battery life is something like 4 times longer in life than the MacBook Air. This is huge, as you can travel all day long or fly on a 13-hour flight and never have to charge your iPad battery. With a MacBook Air or any laptop, you're constantly watching the battery go down, and you're wondering where you're going to get your next charge. Second, because the iPad 2 is much lighter than even an 11-inch MacBook Air, and because it uses touch technology, it is much more convenient. That means you're not only more likely to bring the iPad 2 with you to various places, you're also going to use it in more various places. Ever try using a laptop in bed? It's pretty awkward. With a laptop, you have to sit up in bed and your hands have to be placed in a certain position to use the keyboard. With the iPad 2, you can recline back and browse through when using the various apps on the iPad 2 in a much more relaxed position. Third, because the iPad 2 is thinner, lighter, and uses touch technology, using various apps on the iPad 2 is more enjoyable than using them on the computer. As compared to a laptop, it is more enjoyable to do the following on an iPad 2. Watch movies, play games, read electronic magazines and newspapers, browse the internet, and browse your email and messages. While typing may be more difficult on an iPad than a laptop, you can get very close to laptop typing by using an external Bluetooth keyboard with the iPad 2. Finally, Another reason to get an iPad 2 over a laptop is that there are many more apps for the iPad than are available for laptops, and the apps on the iPad 2 are much cheaper than programs developed for standard computers. And another reason to get the iPad 2 is that the service Siri is more likely to come to the iPad before it comes to the MacBook Air. So anyways, so those are, if you're thinking about whether or not to get a MacBook Air or an iPad, I'd get an iPad. Now, there's a caveat to this. If you don't have any computer and your only computer device is going to be the iPad or MacBook Air, you might want to get a MacBook Air if you are into heavy content creation. So for example, if you use a computer to do your work, and so the choice is between getting an iPad to do your work or using a MacBook Air to do your work, I would probably get the MacBook Air. So for example, if you do a lot of word processing and this device is going to be your sole production device, typing is probably better, and creating documents on the iPad, on the MacBook Air. Similarly, if you're editing video professionally, you're going to want a computer, a regular computer, maybe even get a Mac Pro or a MacBook Pro, because you need a lot of processor power. And while there are video editing apps on the iPad, they're not really industrial strength kind. That being said, if you're like most people, need a computing device at home just for things like reading email, writing email, browsing the internet, and then running various programs for entertainment purposes, or for your hobby or keeping track of stuff, you can do that all on the iPad or iPad 2. So I think for the most everyday people who are not using a computer device at home for huge content creation, I think the iPad 2 is a much better device than any computer. Anyway, so those are my thoughts. Now, I mentioned you can hook up a keyboard to an iPad if you really want to type on it. And really, there's two ways to do it. I think the main way is through Bluetooth connection. I don't know if you can still do it by USB connection using the camera dock. But Wired has an interesting story about a new keyboard that really solves one of my problems. And one of my problems is, let's say you have an Apple Bluetooth keyboard that you use with a computer. It's kind of a pain if you want to use it with your computer and then switch it to using it with your iPad, because if it's in Bluetooth and paired with your computer, you gotta then sort of unpair it from the computer and then pair it with your iPad. Otherwise, it's gonna it's gonna type on your computer as you're typing onto the iPad. So according to Wired, there is a device that's kind of clever. And let's see who makes it. It's a company called Matias, M-A-T-I-A-S. So apparently they came up with several devices that work with a computer and then like a mobile device, like even the BlackBerry. But they have a keyboard that goes for $80 called the Slim model. And basically, it allows you to connect by USB to the computer and then connect by Bluetooth to your iOS device, like an iPad or iPhone. And then there's a switch. So while it's connected by USB to the computer, you can flick a switch, and then the keyboard will work only with the Bluetooth connected iPad or iPhone. And then you click the switch and it goes back to the computer. So if you're if you have like a laptop at your, computer, and you want to use it with your iOS device, this would work. And apparently, it also has like a row of buttons that control the Mac. And then when they're in iOS mode, they control the iPad through the buttons. Like you can run the slideshow or trigger the home button. So, it's cool. Now, here's the weird thing. It doesn't have batteries, and the Bluetooth runs off the USB power as it's connected to the computer. Now, that's the problem with that is, like, what if you want... So this isn't really an ideal mobile Bluetooth keyboard, right? Like, you can't, like, take this, pack it up with your iPad and go somewhere. I mean, what I would like is a Bluetooth keyboard that can sort of switch between devices that it's paired much easier. Right now, I find it to be kind of like a pain. So this device is mainly if you are, if you have your computer with your iPad near you. And so it's not for all situations, but it is sort of a clever compromise. So if somebody's traveling with a laptop or a MacBook Air and the iPad and want to have like a bigger keyboard that works with both, this might be an interesting solution. Although I gotta tell you, this might be good for somebody at work where their computer's at all the time and they have a keyboard, and let's say they want to type on their iPhone or iPad. That might be a cool workaround. So the company's name is Matthias. Their slim model is $80, and then they have a more expensive $200 tactile keyboard. That's like if you're a hardcore typist. Okay, so one of the things that I've been talking about is how the iPad is getting more and more into the enterprise, which is the business environment or government environment or school environment. And, before, Apple never really had any sort of inroad or foothold in the enterprise. But the iPad, because everyday people are using it, is so popular that they're bringing it to work and they're asking their IT people, why can't we have it here? Now, one of the things that I think it has been a stumbling block for Apple or the iPad is, in the enterprise, what dominates are Microsoft Office applications like Word or Excel. And, there's a rumor that eventually Microsoft is going to release Office-like apps on the iPad. But even now, there are solutions. There are third-party apps that are like Office compatible, and even Apple's own Pages and Keynote apps can import and export Word and PowerPoint-like formats. But word comes from the Windows 7 News.com website that OnLive is releasing Windows 7 to your iPad. So you're going to actually have a Windows operating environment on the iPad, and here's what they say. Okay, so basically, OnLive is a gaming service, an internet-based gaming service, and at CES, which is the big consumer electronics show in Las Vegas, they announced something called OnLive Desktop Service. And what it says here in this article is that it allows you to use Windows 7, which is, an operating system from Microsoft, on your iPad over the internet. So you need to have, I guess, a fast internet connection. But with this app, which is free, OnLive Desktop app, which you can get in the iTunes App Store, it allows you to access Windows 7 virtual machine on the internet from your iPad, and then OnLive starts up a virtual machine on one of its servers and streams, according to this article, the screen to your iPad. So then you get like a Microsoft Office desktop, and you can use for free apps like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and touch-based games. And you interact according to this the same way you would on an iPad. You pinch and you zoom, and you can use an external keyboard. Now, the free part gives you only 2 gigabytes of storage. And if you want to get like more storage and go Pro, you have to pay $9.99 per month. And then you get a larger selection of programs and features and 50 gigabytes worth of storage. So, I'm going to try to see if I can test this out, but it looks pretty cool. So, I think we're going to see more of this, which is the iPad becoming sort of a client for programs that are in the cloud. And this OnLive free program seems to be doing that. And I wonder if Microsoft is going to offer that at some point, where you're going to have Microsoft Office in the cloud, primed for the iPad. And then you'd see, I think, a lot of businesses embracing the iPad, right? Because they could, it'd be easier to maintain iPads than personal computers that each have their own installation of Microsoft Office. Okay, so now I didn't get a chance to do this podcast since the holidays, and I thought I'd talk about some apps or products that I got related to the iPad during the holiday period and what I thought of them. Well, one thing that I got as a present for one of my kids. I got the free app in iTunes called Cars 2 AppMates, and then the free app comes with, you go into a store and you can actually get it from Apple's website. You buy these 2 little cars that are physical, little toys called AppMate cars. And they're from the movie Cars 2. And these are little, like, I don't know, I'd say like an 1.5 inches, 2 inches little plastic cars. But what's unique about them is they have some sort of sensor on the bottom. And the way, and I don't know, I think I paid like $14 or $20 for 2 of these cars. And you can get different combination of these cars. And basically what you do is you take the car and you launch the app, and then you place the car on the iPad screen, and you hold it down with like 2 fingers, and then the app is supposed to sensor the cars, and then the app, which is like a road or the town, the fictional town in the Cars movie, sort of moves around as you move a little bit, holding the car down on the iPad screen. And so my kids seemed to like this, and they were all playing with it. And here's some observations. First, it's a little buggy. Sometimes the software doesn't really, recognize that the car is being placed there, and you have to reset it. So the software can be a little buggy. And then also, one of the cars at some point just stopped being recognized at all by the app. And I don't know if something's broken. Basically, the bottom of the car seems to have like these little sensors or something. So that's a little frustrating. And then I read somewhere that some people were experiencing scratches on their iPad screen from using the cars. Now, I don't know, the whole thing's kind of gimmicky. Actually, I put the physical cars away in the app. You can instead, if you don't have a car, like a physical car, you can use a virtual car that comes in the app. And frankly, my kids are just as happy with that now and using the app, and the app is free. So I would forego using these little physical cars. 1, it could scratch your screen, and 2, I don't know, they're kind of gimmicky and I don't think they last. But the concept is great, that you would have real world objects that interact with the screen. So, that's one of the things that I got. Okay, something else that I got that I'm a little happier with, which I got from my wife, is a AirPlay-enabled battery rechargeable speaker made by iHome. And iHome has this portable rechargeable speaker called IW1. I think it retails for $300, and I think that's what I paid for it at like a place like Best Buy. And basically, you can connect an iPhone or iPad either by USB to this device or by AirPlay if you connect your iHome W1 to your Wi-Fi network. And the sound is very good for $300. I mean, my family is pretty happy with the sound coming out of this, and it's very portable. It recharges on this little, I guess, a stand that's sort of subsumed underneath the device. And you just lift the device and you can take it to another room, and the battery seems to last a while. When you set up the, the device to your Wi-Fi network, it's kind of easy. You can download a free app from iHome, and you plug your iPad or iPhone by USB into the speaker, and then it recognizes the app, and your app then recognizes the Wi-Fi networks, and boom, that's how you do the connection. Now, I mean, it was a little glitchy sometimes, but overall it works pretty well, and I think I'm happy with it. It's the other AirPlay speaker that Apple sells, I think by Klepch, is like, I don't know, $500 or $600, and this was $300, and the sound's very good, and we use it all the time now. We stream Pandora music to it, or also there's a radio app that we like that has great, I don't know, classical music, and we stream that. And overall, I think it's a good product, and I guess you can get more than one of these things and have them all recognized on your Wi-Fi network, so you could send your music to multiple iHome devices, I guess. Okay, so this third iPad-related device I got as a gift for one of my kids for Christmas, and I got to tell you, it's a big mistake, and I don't recommend it to anyone. Apple sells it for $99.95 on its website, called Disney Spotlight Digital Wireless Mic and Karaoke app. And what it is, it's a wireless mic with, I guess, a proprietary wireless connection to something that connects to your dock, USB dock on your iPad, and it's supposed to send, microphone wirelessly to work with a free app. Now, the free app gives you various karaoke songs for free from Disney, and then you can buy more songs for a price in the app. But I got to tell you, the microphone is a really cheap, poor, it's not a very good microphone, and the wireless connection is kind of not that great sound. And the other thing that's really annoying is you're supposed to be able to connect this to a TV, but it doesn't do it through AirPlay or through an HDMI connection. It uses a old-fashioned VGA connection that's in the dock, in this proprietary dock. So it's way overpriced, and the songs aren't that great that come free with it. So it's even more expensive than $99.95. It's probably better to get a separate microphone, like from Samsung. They make a nice microphone that connects by USB to the iPad, and forget this sort of wireless mic stuff. So I regret this purchase. I just don't think it's a good product. Okay, so now one thing I never got to do before the year ended that I thought I would do now, it's still early in the year 2012, is to sort of do a recap of what I think are the best apps, or the apps that I have that I really like for the iPad 2. So the first category is in gaming. The iPad's a great gaming app, and top on my list of great gaming apps is a car racing app that I play a lot with, and I think my kids like too, and it's called Real Racing 2 HD. It's currently $6.99 in the iTunes store, and I love it. And basically, what's great about the app is that it has highly realistic racetracks, and you can buy virtual cars and race other cars and sort of advance to more difficult racetracks. But what's so cool about this app is the controls are great. You can accelerate using like your thumb or automatically, and you tilt the iPad screen to steer, and also it works fantastically with AirPlay. So you can actually have the driving be on a AirPlay enabled TV using the Apple TV, and so you could, your iPad becomes the steering wheel, and then the road in your car that you're looking through is on the TV. It's truly amazing. And you can race other people online, and if there are several people in your common Wi-Fi network, you can race them. And it's just a truly great game, and I think a lot of people are happy with it. The company Firemint makes other apps like Flight Control, but I really think this Real Racing HD is just one of the best gaming apps on the iPad. Another game that I highly recommend that I play a lot with is Battleship for iPad by Electronic Arts. This is $4.99 for the iPad in the iTunes Store. Now, this is based on the classic Battleship game. And remember in the old days, you'd get like I would play with my dad on a piece of paper. We would have each sort of graph paper with squares, and we would sit across from each other, and I would put my ships on a certain part of the grid and my dad on the other ones, and we would call out letters like A15, and he would tell me if I hit his battleship. And the beauty of this is it's all on the iPad, and it's a great game because if you only have one iPad, you can play two people, or you can play against the machine, the computer in the iPad if there's only one person, or you can play two people, and it's cleverly designed so you could each set up separately your part of the screen where your battleships are, and then take turns going back and forth and shooting. But where it gets really great is you can have multiple iOS devices. If you have this game also works on the iPhone and iPod Touch and also the iPad. And so you can, if you have more than one iOS device, you can connect them by Bluetooth and sort of recreate that. I'm sitting across from you and looking at my device, and you're looking at your device, and launch the missiles at each other's battleships and ships. So, I think it's a great game. Loads of fun. It's only $5, and I think it's one of the better games that have been ported from the real world to the iPad world. Of course, another game that makes it in the top 3 on the iPad for me is Angry Birds HD. It's the classic, most popular iOS game, Angry Birds. This is where you launch these little birds by slingshot at little piggies hiding out in different structures. And it's just a load of fun and addictive on the iPad, and it's $4.99. It's just well done. You go to higher lengths. It really works with the interface. If you're new to the iPad and looking for a game that's fun, definitely Angry Birds HD. Okay, another great game for the iPad is Super Stickman Golf. And Super Stickman Golf is, who makes it? It's, let's see, Noodle Cake Studios. And this is basically a Stickman golf game. So it's a golf game where you're trying to get through different holes on a golf course that get increasingly more difficult, and it's addictive. It's very well designed, and it's easy to control. You angle your shot using these arrow buttons, up or down the angle. And you can swing back using a button and deciding when to let go, and it's pretty simple. But between the angles and how much you swing back using the go button, you can go through different obstacles and different holes, and it's very addictive. I play it both on my iPhone and my iPad, and it's you can play multiplayer support now, so you can play online or you can play against your friends. So it's a few bucks, and it has some sort of in-app purchase, but it's only like a few bucks, and I think it's one of the better games that is made for the iPad and very addictive. Okay, so another game that I have, which I guess it's currently only $1.99, which I think really shows off what a great gaming device the iPad is Pinball HD. And basically Pinball HD takes the iPad screen and turns it into the classic pinball machine where you can, flip flippers and send the ball around, and it's just a lot of fun. And what's wild is like the way the ball rolls, you start thinking that this is almost like a real physical ball rolling down. I guess here it says in the description, listed by Apple in the best 10 iPad apps in 2010. It's just a great recreation of the classic pinball game. You can view it in table mode or in portrait mode, landscape mode or portrait mode. And so there's actually two modes. One, it's a static mode, just like like a classic pinball machine. And then there's another mode that's more like like a video swooping in and out of the ball as the ball moves around. So again, this is something I play a lot, and it's only $1.99. Pinball HD by OOO Game Prom, and I recommend it. I think it's a good game. Okay, so another game that I think is great for the iPad and also works on the iPhone, and I think it's only 99 cents now, is Hungry Shark Part 2. There was a Part 1 too, a Part 1 also, and I think it's a universal app that works both on the iPad and the iPhone. And basically it's a simple concept. You're a shark, and by tilting and up and back and forth and left and right, you make the shark swim around an ocean, and it needs to eat. And the shark needs to constantly move and eat people, eat fish, eat birds that get too close to the water, but also it needs to stay away from things that can hurt it. And it's fun, and you just try to eat as much fish and people and things as possible, and not, get near things that can hurt the shark, like pollution and I guess swordfish that are coming at you with their sword. And that's a fun game, and it also shows off what you can do with a big touch device like the iPhone. So that's another one if you're looking for a game that's good. Okay, so that's a recap of some of the games that I think are the best for the iPad that I've been using in the last year. And in some of the future shows as we go through this new year, I'll also do a recap of other categories, apps in other categories like writing or productivity, utility that are great for the iPad that I've used. So look for that in future podcasts. Now, one thing I want to comment on is a story that sort of came out recently about how one of the suppliers for the Apple iOS devices has a improvement on the component, and that is Corning. Corning is the big glass manufacturer in upstate New York, and they make Gorilla Glass. And there's a famous story about how Apple, Steve Jobs, when a prototype of the iPhone was coming out, wasn't happy with sort of a plasticky feel to it and said it has to have glass, a glass front. Well, you need something strong because everyone's going to be touching it and it's going to drop occasionally. And Steve went and met with the head of Corning, and Corning was like, well, we have something, but we don't have a big production of it. And Steve sort of, either bullied or, inspired the president of Corning to commit to making huge quantities of Gorilla Glass. And that's what the iPhone and I guess the iPad has. Well, I'm looking at a website called theverge.com, which was reporting that at CES, Corning revealed Gorilla Glass 2, which is 20% stronger and you can have thinner displays. So you can have a thinner display and have the same strength as the current one. So that's going to make, it's going to make the iPad, if that's used in it, even thinner. And it says here that, when Corning was demonstrating it, it was 20% more damage resistance than the previous generation material. And so you have a choice. You can make the display thinner or stronger. Now, I don't know if you want to make it, I would like it be stronger. I mean, I think the glass on the iPad is already pretty thin, and the glass on the iPhone is pretty thin. I would just rather have it be stronger. So, I think it's great that we're getting this improvement, but if I was Apple, I wouldn't make it thinner. These things can break, and I'd rather have a stronger device. So that's my little editorial regarding what Apple should do. But by now it's kind of moot because Apple's actually probably producing the iPads in China. And so whatever component they've put in it, and you can't really change it. Okay, so that's it for episode 85 of the iPad podcast. It's good to be back. It's been, I'd say about a month since I did the last iPad podcast. Hopefully I'll get back into the swing of things and be able to do this on a weekly basis, generally coming out Sunday night, Monday morning. Again, this is a chit-chat free podcast about all things iPad, and you can find it in the iTunes podcast library. Also, YouTube videos under Mac's Future, and there's the MacFuture.com website where you can see posts and links to the podcasts, and also on Blip TV. So thanks for listening. This is Lex at MacFuture.com, and hopefully see you next week.
This has been a Mac's Future production.